If you don't mind, I just simply have to rant. 10 minutes ago I received an email from Sears, and it said that the Craftsman line is being bought out by Black & Decker. I'm so sick of the buyouts, and it's Black & Decker Stanley, I believe. They're already together, and it just sickens me. And, you know, I haven't had a whole lot of use for Black & Decker since they started making toasters and coffee makers and other nonsense. And in the late 60s, you may remember that they put a 2 or 3 foot cord on their cheap electric drills. Imagine that, a 2 foot cord, which ensured that you had to use an extension cord on every one. And that, you know, that was maddening. Sorry. All right, back to the business at hand here. But, you know, I always liked these companies. But what I did here now, and by the way, the reason I use this aluminum, that's also 1 by 2, is I got about 40 pieces of that. They were all drop-offs, not real long, but I just had a load of that, so that's what I used. But I already cut the steel off to length, and now it's time to do a little layout. So we got 1, 2, 3 holes to drill and a slot, and that's really all there is to that. There's just not a whole lot to it. But on my living blueprint, you can see the dimensions for that hole. So, using, gotta make sure I'm on the right side here. That's 1/2 inch. And it's quite a luxury to have duplicates of some of these tools, but of course you certainly can use a combination square. And these dimensions are not very critical at all. You got a lot of latitude on these. Now this slot here, that needs to be pretty close. Now that can be center punched, or it can just be laid out on the Bridgeport. But I think I'm going to drill that on the just on the drill press. Since this hole will hold the screw, this is a 5/16 18, I'm going to drill at 1/4 inch, which is the tap drill size, and I go all the way through. Now if you're not comfortable holding the drill press vise, by all means clamp it down. But let me tell you something about these small drill presses. If the work tends to get caught, or the drill grabs, I should say, rather than this getting jerked out of your hand, if you're holding it securely, it's more likely you'll stall the motor. But if you've got a real heavy-duty drill press, make sure you clamp everything properly. This is what you call a sensitive drill. There it is, a 1/4 inch hole all the way through. Now do not even think about tapping it yet. What we need to do is provide a clearance hole from the back side here, because remember that we only need this much thread in there, a standard nut. It serves no purpose at all to have a much longer thread. In fact, this long nut here would not be any stronger than this as far as stripping a thread. And you'll only run into a heartbreak if you try to thread the whole thing. So what am I going to do? I'm going to drill a clearance hole from the opposite side. And how deep am I going to go? I don't know if that shows up, but approximately like a nut. And then I will come in from this side and tap it with the 5/16 18. And again, you may want to use a fine thread. It's up to you. So I'll drill that. Set the stop on the lathe, on the drill press, and I won't show that. So there it is. Now actually I drilled one size over 5/16. After all, it's just clearance. So I'm in there, see, that deep. When I tap that hole now, I'm going to enter from this side. That also serves to provide a a mechanism, a drill bushing, a tapping bushing, so that the thread is perfectly straight. And that's a 5/16 taper tap, and I'll do that in the bench vise. Now, by this method, you couldn't tap a crooked hole if you tried. So there's the 5/16 tap, and I'm using some of this bow lube that Paul sent me, and this is my inaugural run with bow lube, licensed by Boeing Aircraft. And that really cuts nice. I should be using a longer tap wrench, but this is what I had out from another job, and I'll go all the way through so I get past those tapered teeth. Okay, tap nice and straight, and I like that bow lube. Notice I have a jam nut on there. I like the looks of a jam nut. Next, I'm going to lay out the slot, and there's the dimensions for that. Now you can change that 3/8 dimension if you want to make this dedicated to a 1/2-inch bed and not use this multi-purpose type clamp on the bottom. So that's 3/8, and that's 1/2. Now those only serve as guidelines. I can dial that in on the milling machine as well, but I generally like to have a let's see which one here. I'll do it on this side also. I like to have some layout lines. Over to the mill. The work is held securely in the vise on two 1-inch parallels, everything cleaned out so it lays flat, tightened nicely. And I have shown how to use edge finders and all of that so many times, so I'm just going to touch off because this isn't that critical. So I will come in this direction until I take a little bit of cut, and then I will zero out the DRO. Remember, it'll be a total of a 1/2 inch over, but I won't take that all at once, but I can watch the DRO with that. And as far as the depth, then I will come and I will touch the top, zero out my knee crank, and eventually dial it in 0.375, but again, that won't all be done at once. So here's the touch off on the x-axis. Be sure and wear your safety glasses. There I go, and I am zeroing out. Raise it up. Turn the machine off. And now the touch off here will be done without power. Just come till I touch right there. And I won't use the digital readout. I do not have one for the Z-axis, so off camera I am zeroing out the crank, the knee crank dial. Here I go, and I'm feeding in the Y direction. I'm going to stop and change cutters. Okay, that's a new cutter. What a difference that made. It's a lighter cut too. I'm over at 450 thousandths now. That gives me 50 thousandths finishing in the x-axis. And now I'll raise the knee about 50 thousandths at a time until I get down to the depth of 0.375. This is the very last finishing pass, taking about 5 thousandths off, and that brings me to the line and to the 500 thousandths on my DRO. Same thing with the vertical raising of the knee. I'm to the line, and it's been 375 thousandths. And so the finishing pass just takes off a few thousandths. And feed kind of slow on your last pass with just a little bit of Earl. And do not take your part out of the machine until you're darn sure that you're done. You'd never get it back in there the same. And if you want to take some readings with micrometers or calipers, go ahead and do it before you take it out. Looking pretty good so far. I've deburred a little bit, broken some of the corners, and that's what I just milled. Now we have 2 holes to lay out and drill. If you look, I've already done part of the layout here. The dotted line here, the hidden line, represents the half-inch in mark if I extended that line up. So when I drill those holes, I want to make sure that I don't drill too far off like they did on this one, remember? So I have determined that that would be 716 thousandths over, which was 1/2 inch plus the radius of a 5/16 bolt. That's 5/32, and let's see, and just a little bit more to get me away from the edge, another 1/16 of an inch. So that's a total of 716. I think I'll write that down so you can see it in the next clip. And then the bolts should be, here they are 3/8 in from the sides, and I told you I wanted a little bit more, so I'll make them, I want them closer to the edge, so I've changed that to 5/16. Right there. Some of you keep worrying that I'm going to add music to my videos, but don't worry. So using the combination square, I'm just proofing myself. Proof yourself so you don't spoil your work. So I can see by doing this that my holes will not run into the slot. So there's the dimensions, 7/16, and the holes will be 5/16 from each side. And those are truly 5/16 holes. They're not to be threaded. The threading's done in the bottom piece. Later on, if 5/16 holes are a little bit restrictive to you, open them up to that one size over. Took me a long time to realize that sometimes I was fighting things simply because I didn't drill a hole quite large enough. So do as so. I took just a little different turn here than what I had planned on. I'm drilling the 2 holes on the milling machine, so they're just perfectly in line, and I used an edge finder to find the edge. I probably did a little overkill. It's shaping up, and you can see the holes are well placed. Now the next thing is to make the bottom clamp piece, and really that's all that is left. I'd like to have some cold rolled steel, but I can't seem to find any around here, so I think I'm going to have to make it out of the hot roll, which is what I made the other one out of. Remember, you can always identify hot rolled by the blackish or bluish color. It's softer, easier to bend, but it does not machine as well. I'll look around just a little bit.